Have you ever asked yourself, where does true happiness lie? There is a small kingdom in the world, tucked deep in the misty Himalayas, a place where progress is not measured by GDP, but by happiness. That place is Bhutan. I first learned about Bhutan not through a journey, but through the memoir Beyond the Sky and the Earth by Jamie Zeppa, a Canadian woman who left everything behind to live and teach there. In her pages, I saw a country where happiness was not a destination, but a way of living each day. And I asked myself, could such a place truly exist? That question set me on the road. And Bhutan gave me the most important lesson of all, how to live slowly. On the first day, my plane touched down at Paro Airport, Bhutan's only gateway to the outside world. They say it is one of the most difficult airports to land in, nestled inside a narrow valley surrounded by towering mountains. Only a handful of pilots are licensed to fly here. I remember the moment the plane tilted, circling over green ridges and scattered Bhutanese houses with red-brown roofs. My heart beat faster, a mix of nervousness and excitement. And when the wheels touched the ground, it felt like a door opening to an entirely different world. Stepping out, the first thing I noticed was silence. No honking, no noise. Only the wind carrying the scent of the mountains and the faint sound of wind chimes. Even the airport itself looked like a miniature temple. Carved wooden roofs, traditional patterns, and prayer flags fluttering. Paro, a small town nestled in a valley, was my first glimpse of Bhutan. White-walled houses, dark wooden frames, windows carved with intricate designs, preserved as if time had never passed. From Paro, we continued to Tamchog Lakang, a small temple by the Paro River, built in the 15th century by Thangtong Gyalpo, the legendary master who created hundreds of iron-chain bridges across the Himalayas. When I stepped out of the car, what appeared before me was a scene both simple and extraordinary. A humble temple, not tall or gilded, quietly resting by the hillside. In front of it stood the ancient iron bridge, rusted chains, weathered planks, now too fragile for anyone to cross. A new bridge had been built for visitors, but I felt drawn to the old one. Standing before it, my heart grew still. There was fragility, as if a strong wind could make it collapse, but also resilience. It still stood, defying centuries, a steadfast witness of faith and perseverance. I leaned on the railing, watching the Paro River churn below, hearing the water crash white against the rocks. Above, the mountains wrapped the temple in mist like protective arms. In that moment, I felt I was standing in a sacred space where people, nature, and time converged. A question arose within me. Could happiness be like this? Not noisy, not dazzling, but simply the stillness of breathing with the earth, feeling complete. Tamchog Lakang may not be the most famous destination in Bhutan, but for me, it was the first doorway into another kind of journey, the journey of rediscovering silence within myself. On the second day, I woke early for the trek to Tiger's Nest, Taksang Monastery, the most sacred symbol of Bhutan. The trail stretched more than 4 kilometers, steep and winding. From the very first steps, my breath grew heavy, my heart beat fast. I am not good at climbing, and at times I wanted to turn back. But then I saw monks in crimson robes walking steadily, unhurried, as if each step was meditation itself. I tried to follow. Instead of rushing, I inhaled deeply, exhaled slowly, placing each foot with awareness. Strangely, everything became clearer. The wind whispering through pine trees, horses snorting as they carried riders, prayer flags fluttering in the mist. At one point, I stopped at a cliff and looked down at the Paro Valley far below. The view was breathtaking, not just in beauty, but in humility. My worries and city pressures suddenly felt so small, so trivial. After nearly 3 hours, the monastery appeared. Tiger's Nest clung impossibly to the cliffside. Red roofs, white walls, incense smoke drifting in the thin air. I stood frozen. Inside, bells echoed. Chants vibrated deep and low. The scent of sandalwood and butter lamps filled the hall. I sat down, closed my eyes. In that silence, it felt as if an invisible hand touched my shoulder and whispered, "Let go. Breathe. Live only this moment." When I opened my eyes, tears had fallen without my knowing, not from sadness, but because for the first time in so long, I felt fully present, whole, enough. Tiger's Nest was not just a monastery. For me, it was a reminder. Sometimes to find yourself, you must climb higher, leave burdens behind, and listen to your own heart in the stillness of the mountains. On the road from Paro to Punakha, I did not expect a sight that would stop my heart. The path grew awash in purple. Jacaranda trees, though not native to Bhutan, bloom every spring, showering petals like soft purple rain, carpeting the ground. The whole road became a dream. I opened the car window, the breeze carrying their faint fragrance. Watching petals fall, I remember the purple flame trees of my school days, the things lost and gone. My heart sank, but then warmed, for each falling petal seemed to whisper, "Life is fragile, and that fragility makes it precious." And then, rising through the sea of purple, Punakha Dzong appeared. Built in the 17th century at the confluence of two sacred rivers, Pho Chu and Mo Chu, it looked like a giant ship anchored between waters and forest. Passing through the carved wooden gate, I felt time pause. White walls towered, red-brown roofs glowing in sunlight, faint chants echoing. Walking down the wooden corridors, I saw jacaranda shadows on the ground, shafts of light spilling through narrow windows. I felt small yet full. Small before the grandeur of history and faith. Full because I knew. Here, nature and human spirit merged as one. I sat on the worn stone steps, touched by centuries of feet. I wondered, how many generations had walked here? How many prayers, tears, and smiles had seeped into these walls and petals? Perhaps Punakha Dzong is not just a fortress. It is a mirror, reflecting my own soul. In this noisy world, what I need is not more, but to learn to pause and listen. And in that stillness, I began to feel something like healing. After my days in Paro and Punakha, I began to notice the rhythm of everyday Bhutanese life. Even on the streets, everything moves slowly, quietly, almost without haste. One thing amazed me. Bhutan has no traffic lights. Thimphu, the only capital in the world without them, regulates traffic by a single officer at a roundabout. His arm movements slow and graceful, like a dance. And surprisingly, everything remained orderly. No horns, no rush. As if everyone already knew how to yield, how to share the road. Men wore the go, a knee-length robe tied with a belt paired with knee-high socks. Women wore the kira, long, colorful dresses with jackets. This was not costume, but a national requirement, a living preservation of culture. Watching them, I saw pride in every step. In small towns, children played near temples, holding tiny prayer flags. Adults gathered at tea shops, speaking softly, never with their eyes glued to phones. They were truly present with one another. I will never forget the smiles, not polite smiles, but open ones, flowing from their eyes, gentle and kind. Meeting a stranger, they would greet me, Kuzu Zangpo La, meaning, may you be well. In those words, I felt sincerity, as if each greeting was a blessing. Bhutanese culture is the blending of Vajrayana Buddhism with daily life. Faith is not distant, it is breath itself. Morning chants, spinning prayer wheels, bowing to a mountain as one passes. Seeing how they live, I understood why Bhutan is called the Kingdom of Happiness. Because here, happiness is not found in shopping malls, but in footsteps, in greetings, in the smiles that light the streets. The next morning, on the way to a famous monastery, I stopped in awe. Before me stretched a golden wheat field at harvest. Farmers bent in the sunlight, sickles flashing, gathering bundles of wheat into small stacks. No machines, no mechanical noise, only the scrape of sickles, laughter shared across the fields, and the earthy scent of ripening grain. I watched, transfixed. Sunlight fell on bronze faces, sweat glistening but radiant with joy. Children chased one another at the edges, sometimes carrying wheat bundles to their parents. Women in bright kira dresses cut and chatted, laughter ringing like scattered notes of music. I thought, this too is a temple, not built of stone or gilded with gold, but a temple raised by nature and human hands. Each swing of the sickle, each drop of sweat was a ritual. Each step across the fields, a prayer for harvest, for family, for life's continuity. One farmer looked up, saw me watching, and smiled. He handed me a freshly cut bundle. I held it, felt its weight, warm from the earth, heavy with promise, and in that simple gesture, my heart stirred. I realized, in Bhutan, the sacred is not only in bells and incense, but in the touch of a sickle to wheat. Not only in solemn rituals, but in the ordinariness of work. Life itself becomes practice. That day, I did not enter the monastery. But I knew I had stepped into another temple, one built of fields, children's laughter, and farmers' sweat shining like offerings to the sun. From Punakha to Thimphu, the road took me over Dokula Pass, more than 3,100 meters high. There, 108 white Chortens stood in a circle, shrouded in thick mist. Built to honor soldiers who had fallen in conflict, they did not shout of war or glory. Instead, they stood like silent candles, whispering prayers of peace. I sat on a stone step, hand on the cold surface worn smooth by winds. The chill seeped into my skin, yet my heart felt warm, as if an unseen presence comforted me. I thought of wars elsewhere, of grief, and realized, here even memory of loss is preserved with silence and compassion. As the mist lifted, the Himalayas revealed themselves, and there stood Gangkhar Puensum, the highest unclimbed mountain in the world, gleaming with snow, not because it is impossible, but because Bhutan has forbidden climbing. The mountain is sacred. Elsewhere, people boast of conquering peaks, but in Bhutan, they are proud because they stopped. They bowed to nature, acknowledging that some things are not ours to claim. At Dochula, I understood, happiness does not always mean reaching higher. Sometimes it is in letting go of conquest, simply standing still, and marveling at creation as it is. I left the past lighter, as if the Himalayas had whispered, some peaks are not to be conquered, but to be revered. North of Thimphu, I visited the Takin Reserve, home of Bhutan's national animal. At first sight, I laughed. The Takin looked absurd, body like a cow, head like a goat, walking lazily as if carrying myths on its back. The guide told me the legend of Drukpa Kanli, the divine madman, who once ate goat and cow, then fused their remains and breathed life into the Takin. But when my eyes met its gaze, my laughter faded. In those deep, quiet eyes, I saw something ancient, as if it looked through me, touching some forgotten corner of my soul. Its presence was not loud, yet it silenced me completely. That afternoon, I climbed to the Buddha Dordma statue, over 51 meters tall, gilded in gold, overlooking Thimphu Valley. Inside, they say, are more than 125,000 smaller Buddhas, each containing a prayer of compassion. Entering the dim hall, butter lamps flickered, chants reverberated like echoes from another world. My heartbeat blended with the rhythm. Closing my eyes, I felt as if thousands of unseen eyes were upon me, not judging but reminding, be kind, be content, be awake. When I opened my eyes, the golden Buddha gleamed against the misty evening. I felt both small before the universe and lifted by an unfamiliar peace. In that moment, Bhutan was no longer just a nation. It was a realm where people, nature, and spirit were inseparable. After days wandering mountains, monasteries, fields, and smiles, I realized Bhutan's happiness is not one thing. It is a weaving of many threads. The first thread, geography. Hidden in the Himalayas, mountains shield Bhutan from invasion, preserving culture as if time never moved. The second, policy. While the world chases GDP, Bhutan created the Gross National Happiness Index. Development is only one part. Alongside it, cultural preservation, environmental protection, and good governance. Free healthcare and education ensure happiness is not privilege, but foundation. The third, people. Bhutanese are gentle, slow living, and kind in small gestures. They do not need much to feel enough. Nature sustains them, families ground them, and daily rituals, morning prayers, evening meditation, contemplation of death not for fear, but to live more deeply, keep them awake to life. One morning I saw elders slowly spinning prayer wheels at a temple gate. One afternoon, children laughed, waving small prayer flags in the wind. All of it as natural as breathing. Writing these words, I see clearly. The secret of Bhutan's happiness is not distant or mystical. It is simply a way of life, a way of pausing, preserving, and loving. Every land teaches us something. Some teach strength in war, some teach compassion and love, some teach wealth and the limits of materialism. But Bhutan, to me, is like the final classroom, a place where, after the soul has seen enough joy and sorrow, one learns to live simply, gently, unconditionally happy. I remember the farmer's eyes, shining as he bent to harvest wheat, the Bhutanese smiles that welcomed me into their circle, the temple bells ringing across the cliffs of Tiger's Nest, and the still, timeless gaze of the takin in the forest. All of them are pieces of one great picture. A picture reminded me, happiness is not a destination. Happiness is how we live in each moment. When I left Bhutan, I carried not just photos or memories. I carried a mirror to reflect my own life, a reminder that perhaps I don't need as much as I think, that all I need is to pause, to connect, and to love. And that perhaps is the greatest gift Bhutan gives to the world.